Welcome to Marvel Good Yay, presented by the Geek Easy podcast. This is our podcast where we will be going back and discussing every single Marvel Cinematic Universe movie leading up to the release of Avengers Endgame. I am Pixel Dan.
I'm Jonathan Leonard.
I'm Jaron McCaffrey.
All right, what's up, guys?
This is our first spin-off.
It is.
Our first official spin-off. I feel we've earned this by putting out 5 properly timed episodes.
Yes.
In a row.
Now that we're on a schedule, we can just start throwing out extra things.
Yeah, we're gonna throw out a lot of extra things too,
which is so many.
Which
extra
is really
things coming
like we were like had the discussion where we were like we should do some extra stuff added on, and then we just went full on like let's just do 20 mini-sodes on.
We immediately decided to do way too many extra things.
Nah, we're good.
It's gonna be awesome.
Says the guy who doesn't do any editing or posting.
Whoa!
That's true, but look at me. I do a lot of taxes.
Oh, he does. He does do a lot of taxes. All right, so in this first mini episode, we are going to jump all the way back to where it all began for the MCU, back to 2008 to talk about Iron Man.
The beginning of the beginning.
The beginning of the beginning.
That's right.
Did you want to give us a few stats on the film, John, to set us up?
Yeah, we can look at we brought up the box office for the movie just to kind of give you some ideas of where we've grown from. $585.2 million in the U.S. that this movie made. It had, I think, a 91% audience score and a 92% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes.
That's good.
Yeah, I'm trying to get
That's real high for a superhero movie too, right?
And again,
at the time?
Remember this was coming off of a lot of kind of
junky superhero movies in the mid-aughts.
Mm-hmm.
To give kind of a short review of superhero movies as a whole, we had, the 70s brought us a couple of very highly regarded Superman movies, and then the 80s brought us some other Superman movies. The 80s and very early 90s brought us a couple of highly regarded Batman movies, and then the rest of the 90s brought us some other Batman movies. Getting into the 2000s, when special effects really became a thing, the X-Men kind of ushered in a wave of additional attempts at these. And
yes.
we got some really good X-Men movies out of that, and then some other X-Men movies. What really kicked off the boom, in my opinion, and the opinion of the box office in general, was the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, which started in 2002. And that really kicked off this giant wave of, hey, now we can do everything and we're basically printing money. And for a long time, they were printing money, but not necessarily with great movies.
Yeah.
Yes,
some were good, some
yes.
were bad, but we had the Fantastic Fours in there, we had the Batman reboots in there. We
Hulk.
Hulk, the Ang Lee version, we had the Daredevil, we had the Ghost Riders.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of, some Punishers.
Affleck Daredevil.
Some big hits and misses kind of in that range there.
Yeah. Well, and I would almost feel like more... the X-Men made it okay to do superhero movies.
Yeah.
The Sam Raimi Spider-Man made it okay to be true to the source material.
Yes. Yep. I can see that.
Yeah,
Sure. And, the X-Men movies made some money.
Yep.
The Spider-Man movies broke some records.
Yeah. For sure.
So that was the one where, the X-Men movies paved the way to the Spider-Man movie. The Spider-Man movies paved the way for everyone in Hollywood to go, well, we should be making these.
Yep. For sure.
And then what seemed like 6 very, very long years later, we get Marvel Comics going into business for themselves. Up until this point, they had basically been leasing out movie rights. They had been doing this since the mid-90s because they had a ton of financial troubles and were trying to find any reason to make money and to keep money coming in. So they were just selling studios movie rights to their characters, most of which were not even being optioned. People were just securing them so they had them. Projects were being worked on. They would come and go. Most of them never saw the light of day. Fast forward to the point where, again, CG has come to the level where you can make these superhero movies now and make them believable to the degree of and entertaining to the mass market. But Marvel doesn't own anything anymore.
Yeah.
But all of their characters are making tons of money.
Right.
The X-Men are making bank. The Spider-Man movies are making bank. Even your lower tiers, your Punishers, your Daredevils, like some of these are absolutely panned movies. I will argue about the Afro Daredevil till I'm blue in the face. I dug that movie.
As will I.
Yeah, but a lot of people hated it.
You and me versus everybody.
Yeah, there we go. But it's I feel like that happens a lot. But regardless of whether or not people liked it, it made money, and a lot of these movies were. And Marvel Comics is sitting back, going, "Okay, well, now we've got the leverage to create our own studio. We've got the ideas to put our own movies into effect. Well, we don't have any characters left.
Yeah.
All of our A guys are gone. Who do we have left?"
All of our A guys and a lot of our B guys.
Yeah.
So we're going. Marvel's going into this with their third string at this point.
Right.
And I want everybody to flash back, because right now everybody has Iron Man at the top of their list.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's been that way for a little over a decade. And I don't know what our age demographics are. I don't know how many of our viewers are old enough to remember 10 or 12 years ago.
Yeah.
But in 2006, you probably knew who Iron Man was, and that was it.
Yeah. Yeah,
You didn't care
joke.
a bit,
Yep.
unless you were a diehard Marvel Comics fan.
Yeah, he was not mainstream.
No,
I would
even a
not
little
call
bit.
him mainstream.
Yeah.
Even though Iron Man and the Avengers, I guess people might have heard of the Avengers, but they were definitely bigger before and had fallen totally out of the mainstream audience appeal.
And I would say even then, I think Marvel Comics were generally bigger than DC Comics, but I think there was a lot more people who would have known what the Justice League was before they knew who the Avengers were.
Well,
they knew it was a thing, but they wouldn't have been able to give you a roster.
But also the Justice League, remember, the Justice League had a huge animated series that was a big deal in the late 90s into the early 2000s. Batman and a lot of the DC characters went way mainstream. Batman obviously because of those movies, but you remember that big burst of animated series for DC that did super well. DC's characters were everywhere.
That Batman animated series from the 90s is, I feel, one of the definitive versions of the character.
Yeah, definitely.
I agree 100%.
Definitely.
The other thing that's, I think, important to point out there is that the Justice League is always Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman.
Yes.
Maybe Aquaman because he was what were they? Power Friends or what?
Super Friends?
Super Friends.
Yeah.
Because he was a super friend. But when you get into, how many people could really name?
Yeah.
How many casual fans could name Cyborg?
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Right,
or some of the other people who have been in and out of the Justice League.
Right.
Well, but that was
Martian
that was kind of the
Manhunter
thing.
and,
With the Justice League, everybody at least kind of had an idea who the core was. With the Avengers, it's like
I would put them on the same level. I think people would still know. If you said the Avengers, I think people would say Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk.
Maybe you're
Even
right.
back then, I think
maybe
they
would have 12 years ago. I'm not sure.
Maybe not.
It's just it's crazy to look at it though, because in the 90s, the forefront of comics, especially Marvel Comics, was the X-Men.
X-Men.
The mutants.
Yep.
The mutants dominated everything comic book wise. If you were talking about comics, you were talking about the X-Men. You weren't talking about the Avengers. You weren't talking about Iron Man. So you know what I mean?
Right.
And it's amazing looking at things now and how the X-Men have totally just dropped off. The Avengers are the forefront now of what people know as Marvel Comics characters.
Testament to how big the movie business is.
Yes.
Because one movie can trump
a
year's worth of comic sales.
And that's exactly what happened.
Yep, that is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And that's how it started off. So Marvel Comics went, okay, we've got the ability to make movies now. We've got a few dollars to get it started. Let's make some movies. Who do we have left?
Yep.
And when they went to that roster, Iron Man pops up first. I don't know if he was their number one go-to. I kind of felt like Captain America was always waiting in the wings, but
so I definitely feel like it had to have been Captain America would have been their go-to, but I feel like they probably had to have held him back and we can take more risks with Iron Man.
Exactly. Yeah.
We can, you know,
exactly
if we
point I
throw,
was getting to. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So yeah.
Yeah. So
you know,
when they started off with this project, there were always plans of building this out further because comic book movies were a thing. So Marvel wasn't going, well, let's make an Iron Man movie and hope that it works.
Right.
They had a vision of saying, these are the characters we have. We have most of the original Avengers.
Right.
Let's try to build something with those. But we have to start that by making standalone movies and seeing where it goes. So right there in the summer of 2008, we got our first two. Iron Man being one, The Incredible Hulk being another. And The Incredible Hulk was kind of its own story, which we'll get into in the next episode of the minisode here.
Definitely.
So we'll try to stay away from talking about that as much as we can. But Iron Man was sort of their gamble. I don't know how much of a specific gamble they looked at it is. I don't think there was any point where they were like, maybe we'll lose a ton of money on this. I think they knew from a cost standpoint that they had a fairly safe project on their hands.
Yeah.
I don't think they had a clue of the success they were about to stumble into because they were making a movie about Iron Man.
right.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't, you know, he was not the thing back then at all that he is now. And part of the reason he is that thing is because they got off the bat by doing the best thing you can do to start off your movie project, and they went gangbusters on their casting. You know,
Right.
Which again would have been looked at as a gamble at the time.
I was gonna say. Well, that's what I was gonna say. Did they?
That's the thing.
Well,
Like,
no, I mean, it's not like they landed and went home run.
Right.
You know, nobody signed Robert Downey Jr. to the bottom line and went, okay, now we've just made $1 billion. Easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not the point. The point is they had a vision.
Okay.
They found a guy who fit that vision,
Yep.
and even though he was probably a bit of a fringe as far as, you know, like manning your massive multi-billion-dollar
Right.
industry goes, he was the right guy for the job, and they went with him.
Yeah.
And that was kind of what I would look at as step one in knowing that Marvel was devoted to the creation aspect, and that devotion is what led them into the rest of it.
Yep.
Because I'm not the biggest Robert Downey Jr. fan in history by any means, and certainly in 2006, I was like, okay, that sounds fine.
Right.
You know, I would have equated it easily at the time to Michael Keaton being cast as Batman. There was a whole bunch of people in 1988 and 1989 when they were making that first Batman movie who went, how's Mr. Mom going to be your Batman?
Yeah.
This is stupid. You
Yeah.
know? And then that movie came out and really blew people out of the water. I don't think anybody really expected Robert Downey Jr. to be a name who was going to be carrying a superhero franchise.
Right.
Until they met Tony Stark.
Right.
Which
Yeah.
for a lot of people, this movie is how they were introduced
You're
to
right.
Tony Stark.
You're right.
And Tony Stark really grew. The Iron Man you would see in the comics today, I'm sure, is more Robert Downey Jr. than he ever was
Probably.
from 2006 and
Probably.
before. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There were similarities. That's why it's
Right.
good casting.
Yeah.
But I'm
Yep.
sure that's morphed into that. You know,
Yeah.
I haven't read
I'm sure
it
you're
to
right.
confirm.
I'm sure you're right.
But that's sort of where we landed.
I don't
so
read
in,
comics.
in May of 2000
Anymore.
in May in 2008, the kickoff of the summer season. So it's already a big deal and a big time slot.
Yeah.
Like Marvel owns the summer from year one, which I have to assume was sort of a gamble.
Well, but also they kind of preempted it a little bit. They've that's another standard I feel like they've reset, because I always remember the big blockbuster was July 4th. So like they were, you know, they were kind of kicking it off, but they weren't like in there with the heavy hitters at that point.
Well, and July 4th that year was a pretty heavy hitter because that was when Dark Knight came out, right? That was the July 4th movie.
Was I don't remember.
Okay, it was definitely that summer.
You're the movie guy.
And that
Probably.
one,
You're probably right.
that one made a lot more too.
You know,
Dark Knight made a lot
made a
more
ton
than
more,
Iron Man. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean that's what I remember. That's the way I remember it, is like, okay, you know, they're stepping up to the plate, but they're not batting cleanup yet.
Yeah.
And you know, now the summer starts with the Marvel movie. You know, the summer starts in at the beginning of May.
Hey,
So-
let's look at those comparisons real quick and kind of realize the shift in how things have changed, because The Dark Knight came out that same summer and made over $1 billion. So it beat Iron Man. Iron Man did great, but Dark Knight did better. And Dark Knight was great. I liked Dark Knight a lot. It wasn't until Rises that things really started fallen down for DC
Right.
for me. But remember, like, Christopher Nolan's whole thing with The Dark Knight, with those movies, his string of Batman movies, was to ground them in reality as much as possible.
Yeah.
He made Batman as realistic as he could be. He specifically made sure not to use certain villains because he thought that they couldn't exist in the real world. Like, that was a thing, remember?
Yep.
And so that movie came out that year and made $1 billion, which is great for it. And now Marvel's kicking things off with Iron Man, where they're about to start a whole franchise that goes full on comic book.
Yeah.
And now that is the norm in the movies and what people want to see and what DC has struggled to catch up with ever since.
Yeah.
Isn't that really crazy to see that? Like, look back at that now and see those two movies coming out so close together and how more dominating The Dark Knight was that year and how things quickly changed.
Do you remember that scene in Dogma when they were on the bus? The Angels,
Okay.
Matt Damon and Ben
Yes.
Affleck, and they were having that discussion where Ben Affleck goes, "This from the guy who bet me which was going to be the bigger movie, Star Wars or Crush
Yeah.
Groove."
I'm a tell on that one, man.
I feel like you could have had this conversation in 2008.
Yeah.
Because The Dark Knight was the bigger movie.
Yep.
But man, was Iron Man the bigger impact
Yes.
by about 1 billion degrees.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
It's awesome, though. It's so awesome. I just remember, like, seeing Iron Man, because we, as we've already discussed, like, we all kind of walked into this, like, we know who Iron Man is as comic book guys, but, like, I was never attached to Iron Man in any sort of way, because I grew up in the era of the X-Men. So X-Men and Spider-Man were, like, my Marvel characters as a kid. So I'm walking into this knowing it looks cool from the trailers, but not knowing exactly what I was going to expect. But just like it felt special immediately, I think. Like, I remember walking out of that movie going, that was one of the best superhero movies I think I've ever seen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I had no idea I was going to get that out of Iron Man. I
Right.
had no idea that that was coming. And I kind of relived that a little bit because I rewatched the movie before we recorded.
Yeah.
And like, I realized while I was watching it that I have a lot of that movie, like, memorized. Like, because I watched that movie so much, after it came out, because I liked it so much. Like, I've liked all the Marvel movies, but I'm not sure I've watched any of them as much as I watched that first Iron Man, just because I feel like it was so impactful right from the beginning. And like, even this most recent watch through, I was going, man, I really dig this movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
I still really like this movie.
And I get, like, it's not one that always jumps to my mind as my favorite of the Marvel movies, but every time I watch it, it is solidly entertaining the whole way through.
Yeah.
I think we discussed this a little bit because Jaron and I watched it together not long ago to kind of prep for this. And I don't know if he fully agrees or not, but there's a long-standing stigma about Marvel movies that the only thing they can't do terrific is the villains.
Right.
And I really feel like Jeff Bridges.
Obadiah is awesome.
Yeah, I think he
I
was
like him.
great.
I
in
like
this
him.
one,
I
and
like him.
I would also argue there's several villains throughout the Marvel movies that I seem to have liked more than the mainstream. But I think this one in particular, I don't think he's their best at this point. I mean, he's no Thanos.
Right.
He's no Loki. He doesn't have the longevity of some of those. But as far as the one-offs go, I think they really started strong on this one, and I think everybody kind of forgets about him because he's back at the beginning there.
Well, and I hear that. So I'll just say, I hear that criticism of the Marvel movies a lot, and I never agree with it. Like are there villains that are weak? Yeah, I could name a couple. We'll talk about them when we get to those movies.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of their villains are good. You know what I mean? I like a lot of their villains.
Yeah.
I definitely like Obadiah.
I mean, and he's not a super villain, but he's especially a great first villain, right? Like, and Jeff Bridges is awesome anyway, and the way he plays that character is just so, like from the get-go, from the start, like, you have that almost like, I don't know if I trust this guy kind of a feeling, So you can kind of sense it coming, but you're not sure when it's coming, and they do that kind of, like, he's a snake, he's you find out that he's the one that's behind the whole terrorist thing, and he was just trying to oust Tony basically so he can take over the company. So, like, there's good motivation there, and there's I don't know. This movie just has all of that going for it. I feel like, Tony goes through great growth and
and
it's
the amount of Iron Man lore they pack into. I mean, this is only about a 2-hour movie. Give or take. I mean, it's not terribly long by any means.
Right.
They've certainly gotten longer as time has gone, which to mostly positive results there. But they got the whole Mark I thing in. I mean, they devoted an entire section to that. Opening storyline idea of him being trapped in a cave and having to build this thing from nothing.
Right.
Yeah. They do the Mark II with the test flight. I mean, they go through this progression, but at no point do you feel like you're slogging through all these bits.
Yeah.
Every one of them is building this movie further and further to the point where you get to the end and it never becomes about like, this isn't a movie where he saves the world.
Right.
Right.
They don't start off with the stakes that big. This is
Right.
a movie where he really discovers kind of who he is and then beats another guy who tries to rush to that level.
Yeah.
Which is all you need for a movie like this. Every movie doesn't have to be bigger than the...
In fact, the military even covered up most of his actions in this movie.
Yeah,
right? Like,
exactly.
so the public didn't even know he was doing stuff.
They were trying to cover up all of them.
They were trying to cover everything up. Yeah.
And then you get to that point at the end, which again is another comic book throwback.
The
because
bodyguard
they do
thing.
the press conference at the end where they're going to announce Iron Man as Tony Stark's bodyguard, which was the comic book answer for Iron Man for a long time.
Yeah.
And it was a really neat touch, I thought. And then they swerved me by totally blowing that. And
I
just
am Iron Man.
Yeah, him just becoming Iron Man. The end of that movie had so much. It was such a whirlwind. It was when Coulson...
Coulson. How exciting was it? Hold on. How exciting was it to see Coulson come walking in this movie at this point now? It's like
that's my first note.
Yeah.
So happy to see Coulson.
Yes.
And it just reminded me of how happy I was every time that dude showed up. You pointed out you had always been hoping for, since Iron Man 1, Jaron has been hoping for a Coulson movie. And then got better than that.
For sure, man. 6 seasons of a great TV show. I will fight anybody who disagrees with me.
He will. I've seen him do it. But the end of that movie, you get Coulson making the shield reveal, which I honestly cannot remember if I caught before then or not. I feel like I didn't.
I know I
the
didn't.
Strategic
I know I
homeland.
didn't.
Something.
Yeah. I feel like I didn't. The only problem is rewatching it and hearing it going, God, it seems so obvious.
Yeah.
I really miss it. But I think I did. I think I caught it at that reveal. Then they do the bodyguard thing. I'm like, oh, cool, they're doing that. Then they completely reverse that right there in that same scene, and they just go, I am Iron Man, and that's when the credits roll. And that leaves you with that same feeling where you're like, you're just super jazzed right there. You don't even know what's coming next, but you're jazzed for it. And then you go through all of those credits, and you get one of what I think was probably their biggest, quote-unquote risk in the project, because, I mean, the post-credit sequence isn't going to make or break your movie, but that's a pretty big promise to make when you're not positive of what's coming next. You know what I mean? And I know they were already planning on it.
But I would disagree. I would feel like that there was no risk in that. I would feel like that was their, that's stealing home base off your ground double. You know what I mean? Like that's where that comes in. Like well, this is a safe bet because we don't ever have to bring this up again.
They don't have to. They could have just left it.
I guess that's fair. Yeah.
But how do you remember that feeling though?
Oh man.
Oh my God! I remember us just like, oh my God, this is happening.
Nick Fury shows up in those end credits.
Ultimate Nick Fury.
Yeah, Ultimate Nick Fury. That's the best part. They got the guy that it was drawn after.
Right.
And who couldn't have possibly been happier to be a part of this. Because Sam Jackson loves this stuff. But he shows up and he says those words in Avengers Initiative. And fanboy hearts exploded. All
it was amazing. Amazing. Oh my gosh. I know something I wanted to bring up. Looking back at this now, after all the other movies we've seen, how did you feel about Terrence Howard in the role of Rhodes?
I always liked him at the time. I've liked Don Cheadle more. Since Iron Man 2. I wasn't... The recasting was one of those things I wasn't excited about, and I can go to a couple of other superhero instances of this kind of thing. Most notably, I am one of the few Ang Lee Hulk defenders out there.
Blah.
And that's fine.
That's a good way to discredit everything you're about to say.
I'm not
Hulk
gonna,
dogs, John.
I'm not going to fight anybody on the movie itself. I will battle for Eric Bana. I thought Eric Bana was great. And when they recast him for the Incredible Hulk, and I knew it was a separate project, so I didn't expect him to be, but it was kind of one of those like, blech, whatever. And then they announced Edward Norton, and I went, oh, man, I can't be mad at that. That's amazing. I love that. And again, that's a subject we'll get into in the next episode here. But I had the same thing for Terrence Howard. I like Terrence Howard in that role, and I like Terrence Howard in general. And so when I found out they were recasting him, it was kind of like, that stinks or whatever. And then they were like, well, we're going to bring in Don Cheadle. I'm like, well, I love Don Cheadle. Let's see how this goes. Yeah. And I have liked Don Cheadle more in the subsequent movies than I did Terrence. Now, who's to say? Yeah, Rhodey has had a better role in subsequent movies than he did in the first one. Yeah, Terrence Howard may have been just as good or better.
I think Terrence Howard would have been better.
Yeah,
I wish they had kept Terrence Howard.
Do you?
Well, I prefer Terrence Howard to Don Cheadle. How about that? Mm-hmm. Because also, man, good. Like he didn't take another project and they had to replace. He talked himself out of that job and good. That should be the result. But I do prefer. I think he's a better actor. I preferred his performance. I've always felt. I feel like there was a better camaraderie between him and Stark in that movie than I've ever felt with Cheadle. And now, to that, the role is also a little different. By the second movie, when Don Cheadle was there, they were a little more at odds. Yeah. But, I thought there was a better camaraderie. I thought Terrence Howard was a better performer. For Terrence Howard.
Yeah, watching this back, I really enjoyed Terrence Howard's performance. And I kind of had forgotten that, I think, because I've gotten so used to seeing Don Cheadle in the role now. Yep. And I really enjoyed him. And the camaraderie is the same thing I was going to bring up, just because the way they kind of have that playful bickering with each other is really entertaining. Like specifically the scene where he's flying in the suit for the first time and the planes are chasing him and like Rhodes is like on the phone with them, and that scene's amazing. I love that scene so much. So yeah, I really enjoyed it, him in that role, and it's one of those things like kind of does make me wonder like how that would have turned out if he would have stayed there. Like I really like Don Cheadle, but I enjoyed Terrence in that role.
My counterpoint to that would be I don't think the role would have turned out different one way or the other. I think you had two good options there.
You think it would be different?
I think we would. I think we would have had a War Machine movie if Terrence Howard had stayed around.
Oh, yeah, I disagree. Maybe, who knows? I mean, I don't have a basis to stand here and go, no, we wouldn't. But my point was going to be the exact opposite of that. Is I think we had two good options, and I think we were going to get the same Rhodey no matter who was in there.
Man, you got to remember though, like Terrence Howard was a big thing at that point, and that's part of the reason why Terrence Howard, thought he should get, because he thought he should get more money. Yeah. You know what I mean? He was kind of a big thing. He was an up and comer. He was going to be. Now he's not, because he's crazy, and that's why he got lost that position.
And I was going to say, like,
so we're talking about a world.
He also didn't lose that position because he wasn't in Iron Man anymore.
Right.
He lost that position because, by all reports of a person I've never met and don't know at all, but by all reports I've ever read, he's an absolutely certifiably insane person.
Yes. So we're talking about a world where Terrence Howard is not a raving lunatic.
Okay.
And in that world, I think not only does he create a bigger role, does he turn in a better Rhodey performance in subsequent movies, I think he becomes a big enough thing that they go, well, we've got Terrence Howard in a side part. Yeah. Let's do his own movie.
In your absolute alternate universe, you're probably right.
Awesome.
So the only thing I also want to add, and just to tack on, you mentioned earlier how, as he's going through the different mocks and developing the suit and, all this stuff that is kind of just scenes, happening to tell an overall, there's no conflict in him, right?
Yeah,
He's just
yeah.
developing the suit and becoming Iron Man. I don't think you can overstate the performance of Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
If anybody else, those scenes could have been a slog,
Yeah.
and we'd have been saying, it's great in the beginning, and then it kind of has this slow down period in the middle, before the end fight.
Yeah. Well, and that's twofold there, because the overall, just the overarching personality that exudes through Robert Downey
Yes.
Jr. carries that whole thing to where you never are bored, even
Right.
know what's going on.
Yep.
But there is a conflict in that middle part, but it's all internal.
Yeah.
It's all Tony versus
Yeah.
Tony.
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure.
Like becoming the person who looks back and goes, I want to help the world. What have I actually done at this
Yes.
point? And man, like that resonates in such big ways through the next decade worth of movie making.
Right.
But it all starts in the middle of Iron Man.
Yeah.
Where that scene is coming through, where he first shows up back in the U.S. and he's got his arm in a sling and his sunglasses on. He wants his Burger King hamburger.
Oh yeah. He sits down.
Yeah. And he does
His
that
burgers at
amazing
his
press
press
conference
conference.
where
Yeah.
he just decides he's not going to make weapons anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
And that whole thing that goes from there, and again, which is the build up for Obadiah also. During
Yeah.
that whole every scene in that middle of that movie, which you could easily blow off in a worse movie. All of that means something
Right.
to not only the movie as a whole, but to the generation of movies to come afterwards. And I don't know if they could predict that far out.
Yeah.
I'm guessing they weren't really planning for more than the next couple of years. But the fact that they told a good enough story that gave them the source material to pull from for the next decade is pretty impressive.
Yeah. Totally.
What a start.
Definitely, man. It's amazing too, and it's like we were excited at the time at the thought of what could possibly be coming from this, and the first ever post credit scene that gave us the words Avengers Initiative got us excited at what could possibly happen. It's amazing to look back at this now and see what this turned into. It's pretty awesome, but also this movie still stands on its own as a great movie.
Yes.
A great superhero movie, a good movie.
I think that's going to be the theme as we go through
Yeah.
this 20 movie marathon to figure out. And we've talked about this on the main show before on the Geek Easy podcast. The thing that Marvel does right is they always have that focus on we are building a world, but within this world, we are building good movies.
Yeah.
And this is a great movie.
The world building is an afterthought.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Let's make this movie, and then where can we fit in the little world buildings?
Yeah.
Yep.
And with all the Dark Universe and the DC Universe and all these universes that are trying to copy this, in the best instance, the world building is equal to making a good movie.
Yes. Yeah.
You know,
And I
in the
haven't
best
even- I haven't
instance,
seen
and in
that
a lot of
anywhere
them,
else.
in a lot of them, it's how can we build this world?
They're trying to build worlds and shove
Yeah.
movies into them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Marvel is making movies and building worlds around them.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So amazing. And nobody else has figured it out yet. All these years later, and nobody else has figured it out yet.
I feel like we need a rating system.
I know,
to
right?
rate each of the movie at the end.
I don't.
At the end of this, so I'm gonna give Iron Man 1 4 out of 5 Starks.
4 out of 5 Starks.
4 out of 5.
I like it. I like it. You got to come up with a crazy rating like this for every movie.
For everyone, all right.
You better have something. You
Are
got to have something clever.
Are they all going to be Starks?
No, he's got to have a clever thing for everyone.
okay.
I want it.
You know, it's I'm gonna stick with 4 out of 5 also, but I'm gonna side note that for future ratings, it's really hard. I'm gonna end up giving them all 4s except for a few 5. You know what I mean? Like I almost feel. I love Iron Man 1.
Yeah.
It's not in my top 5.
Right.
Maybe in my top 10. But
I mean, when we walked out of the Iron Man theater, it got 5 out of 5 Starks.
Yes,
Yeah, exactly.
absolutely.
And now
absolutely.
that we've seen, now that scale has expanded.
And that's my problem because 4 feels too high and too low at the same time. Because if I'm doing it on a comparison of just Marvel movies,
that's a different scale. Or if I'm doing it on a comparison of movies alone, then I'm willing to give it I'd give it a 4.5. You know?
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I'm definitely ranking it around the same. And it's going to be interesting to see as we're watching these all the way through again how I rank them. But I almost want to put this in my top 5 right now.
Right now you do.
Yeah, right now I do.
Right now you do.
I know. And that's why I want to see how this all plays out as we rewatch all these movies. But right now, I'm definitely on an Iron Man high.
Yeah.
Like I
brought
it all back.
Here's what we need
when
to do.
we get to the end, we've got to do a full ranking.
Oh my gosh.
Well,
we've got to put them all in order.
I think we should do that.
All of them?
I think we should do that at least every 5.
Okay.
What?
Redo our top rankings at least every 5.
My top rankings won't change.
Well, no, but just out of the first 5. Obviously, put the first 5 in
you
order.
rank the movies that we've watched so far?
So that way we have a kind of a time stamp of at this point in the timeline, this is where. So.
Okay. I'm going to have to start taking notes, but yeah, we can do that. That'd be fun.
Yeah. It'll be easy through Avengers, and then it'll get rough.
Then it's going to get crazy. Yeah. Awesome. Well, that was a really fun discussion, and I hope you guys enjoyed our first episode of Marvel Good Yay. Be sure to stay tuned because we're going to be doing every single MCU movie as we gear up for Avengers Endgame. You can find the audio version of this podcast on the Geek Easy podcast feed that is found on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, the Podbean app, and of course on our YouTube channel. You got anything clever for a sign off here for this one? This is our first episode, so I don't know how we end this.
No, I didn't know that'd be homework. Like our Facebook page.
Oh yeah, we've got that too. Facebook page. All right, guys. Well, until next time.
Marvel Good Yay.
Marvel Good Yay.
Marvel Good Yay.
The Geek Easy podcast is a production of pixeldan.com. Musical tracks used in the intro and outro are used with full permission of the respective owners or creators. Intro and outro narrations are provided by me, Brian T. Stevenson. PixelDan.com's The Geek Easy podcast is provided for entertainment purposes only. The views expressed are those solely of the hosts or guests and do not necessarily represent those of PixelDan.com or any other party. Be sure to join us next time for another installment of the Geek Easy podcast.
Honey, I'm home. And these new Geek Easy minisodes are going to be awesome.
Marvel Good Yay. Think you're the only one who likes superhero movies?
Jared? Is that you?
It's me, John. And I'm here to talk to you about the alternate Geek Easy timeline.